Hi, I'm Joanna, and I'm delivering this session on behalf of the Department for Education to talk to you about apprenticeships. As parents and carers, we know that you're keen to hear about the options available to your child so that you can support them in their decision making. And what we're going to cover today is really important because even if your child does already know what they are planning to do after school, plans can change, and it's important that they're aware of all the options available so that they can make the most informed decision for them. Apprenticeships have come a long way over the last few years, and there are some brilliant opportunities that are available for your child. So, what we're going to look at is apprenticeships and how they work, the range of apprenticeship jobs that are available. We're going to look at the different levels, and I'll explain how you can find apprenticeship opportunities and what your child would need to do to start searching and applying. So, what is an apprenticeship? An apprenticeship is a job with a real employer where the apprentice will work full time whilst also studying towards a qualification. So it might be that they're working as a journalist for Sky, and they'd also be studying and gaining a qualification in journalism. It's a real job with a contract of employment. These include things like holiday pay and annual leave, exactly the same as any other staff member. You can do an apprenticeship from level 2 all the way up to level 7, and I'm going to explain a little bit about the different levels in this session. It's a real job, and your child would be earning a wage from day one, and it can be a really fantastic salary. So, the salary of an apprentice can vary from employer to employer, but legally, an employer has to pay the national minimum wage for apprentices, which is currently £6.40 an hour. And this is lower than the normal national minimum wage, but it recognises that some people are going into their first job with little or no experience. But the good news is that lots of employers pay more than the national minimum wage for apprentices. And I have sourced some local vacancy information, which I'll show you in a little while, and you can see some of the real examples of local and national apprenticeships available and what types of salaries are being offered. It's important to remember that if your child comes across an apprenticeship they're interested in, try not to be too put off if the pay seems low, because there's lots of room for progression and working your way up in an organisation, and lots of employers will increase the salary as the apprentice achieves particular milestones. An apprenticeship typically takes 1 to 5 years to complete. For some roles, it may take a little longer. For example, to be a solicitor takes about 6 years, but all apprenticeships must last for a minimum of 12 months. The total duration will depend on the delivery model that the employer selects, the level, and the subject that they are studying. The apprentice will spend the majority of the time on the job doing the role, and a minimum of at least 6 hours a week off the job, where they will be doing the working towards the qualification. So the study element, that off the job part, takes place with a training provider, and they help the apprentice to achieve their qualifications. And it might be that this is with a college, a university, or an independent provider organisation. The employer will support the apprentice by helping them gain skills and experience, but they also pay the fees of the apprentice's training. So your child would not be expected to pay anything towards those qualification fees. Apprentices will they'll get support for gaining their English and maths qualifications if this is something that they require during their time as an apprentice. And the apprentice will work towards an apprenticeship standard, and these are designed by employers to ensure that the apprentices gain the skills, knowledge, and behaviour that they need for that role. And there are more than 700 different apprenticeship standards now, and they range across the different sectors, which we're going to explore shortly. But it is a real job, and it's important to remember that apprenticeships aren't an easy option, because holding down a full-time job and studying takes a certain skill and commitment, and it won't be the right choice for everyone. Each apprenticeship has a level which falls into one of these four categories: intermediate, advanced, higher, and degree apprenticeships. And the equivalent to text helps to explain what the different levels are. And this can be in comparison to things that you may be more familiar with hearing, things like GCSEs and A levels. So a level 2, which is an intermediate apprenticeship, once your child's qualified, they'd have the equivalent to 5 GCSEs. For a level 3, which is the advanced apprenticeship, it would be the equivalent of 2 A-levels, a T-level, or a level 3 diploma. Now, levels 4 to 7, it groups the higher apprenticeships. But what we do find is that most people, when they're talking about higher apprenticeships, they mean level 4 and 5. And when they talk about degree apprenticeships, they mean level 6 and 7. So a higher apprenticeship at level 4 is the equivalent of a foundation degree. Levels 5 and 6 are degree level apprenticeships, and level 7 is the equivalent of a master's degree level. And here is just an example of some of the different apprenticeships that you can do at different levels, and how many apprenticeships are available at those levels. Lots and lots of different standards there. And this is great for if your child isn't really sure what they'd like to do as a career, as a job going forward, that looking at things like the different roles that you can get an apprenticeship in might inspire them on something that they think, oh, that sounds interesting. I could maybe do that. And now that we've talked about levels, it's important to note here, as it can often be where we see a lot of confusion around apprenticeships, is that the level of apprenticeship you start at will depend on the kind of job that that your child is applying for, because apprenticeships work differently to full-time education in that they are not always linear. And this can be very confusing for students and for parents or carers who think that they should progress on to the next level when they finish at school. So if they left after GCSEs, that means you should do a level 3. If you finish after A-levels, that you should do a degree apprenticeship. But this isn't always the case. This can be for a few reasons. Firstly, it could be around the employer and the industry requirements. Depending on the sector and the apprenticeship, it may be that they only need advanced or higher level and then work their way up through the levels. It could be that those apprenticeships are only offered at particular level. So estate agent apprenticeships, they're only offered at level 2 because that's all the industry requires. Teaching assistants at level 3 is all the industry requires. It may be that your child is entering a completely new sector or an industry that they haven't studied or worked in before, and that doing a level 2 or 3 is right for their level of understanding, and that they could be working on that as a first time job and then be working up through either the apprenticeship levels or just working their way up in the organisation. And it really does depend on the role and the sector requirements. If they would like to progress through the levels or move on to a higher in degree apprenticeship once they've achieved that basic foundation knowledge and expertise, that can really help them to gain their confidence going forward as well. But there are many, very important to keep an open mind about the apprenticeship levels. Try to encourage your child not to just narrow down their searches for a particular option. So try not to just look at degree apprenticeships. We've seen a spike in interest in degree apprenticeships, which is understandable. They are a fantastic opportunity, but it might be that there are other opportunities that are just as good for your child that they may be missing out on. The data from apprenticeship starters over the last year, it does show that the majority of young people aged 16 to 19 were on in the intermediate and advanced apprenticeships. So we're not at all saying don't encourage your child to aspire to degree apprenticeships, because they are brilliant, but you need to talk or think about what is realistic that employers are showing us, and to understand that for their organization, it may not be necessary that your child is going to be starting with them doing a degree level. And we've already discussed that there are different apprenticeship standards. These are designed by the employers, and it's important to note that they are what the organization needs, and they will vary depending on the vacancy. They have a role in mind for their organisation and how they would like to recruit the apprentices, but they also decide who the training provider for that apprenticeship is going to be. With degree apprenticeships, we are sometimes hearing from students that they might have a particular university in mind who they'd be interested in doing the role with, but the employer will select the university that their role is for. So you don't always get to pick which organisation you're going to be doing the study element part with. Also important to note that the recruitment process really varies. So just the same way as it would be for other jobs, it may be that that employer has a lengthy, in-depth process, and it might be that just the CV and interview is required. So that depends on the employer as well. Likewise, the entry requirements can vary. So some employers will have a minimum grade, others may not ask for grades at all. They'll be looking more at the skill sets and potential in who they're recruiting in. It's very important that you encourage your child to read through the job description information to find what that employer is looking for. We have come across some young people who've only applied for one or two higher and degree apprenticeships, and then after their A levels, have unfortunately not achieved the entry requirements, so they've not been able to do that apprenticeship. So it's important to read the different options, have a variety of options available, but also you can encourage your child to apply for multiple things at once so that when they've got their exam results and once they're ready to actually decide which option they're going to do next, they've got a few that they can choose from. But with so many different roles and sectors available to do an apprenticeship in, it can be difficult to know which might be best or how to help your child to enter that sector, especially if it's something that you've got little or no experience in yourself. So the Department for Education have launched career starter apprenticeships, and they've identified the particular ones that you can see here on the screen. And these are all offered at a level 2 or a level 3 and are designed to help your child to enter that workplace after leaving full-time education. And then they can either work their way up through the degree, up through the apprenticeship levels, or they can work up through the organisation. So they're all level 2 or 3. And if they've already completed a level 2 or level 3 course, so for example, if they've already done GCSEs, um, they can still do a degree starter apprenticeship as long as it's in something different to what they've previously studied. Brilliant for those who've got little or no experience in a new industry or are looking to do that as a new job. And the Department for Education have produced 2-page guides for each of these apprenticeships, lots and lots of valuable information and interesting case studies from apprentices who've actually done those roles. Great to explore things that maybe haven't been considered before as potential career options for your child. Higher and degree apprenticeships are a real alternative to following the traditional route of going to university as a full-time student. And they offer the benefits of higher education without the cost. And the apprentices who do this are also able to gain experience because they are working in that sector. It's really important to remember that there isn't a better route. It's not to say that higher and degree apprenticeships is better than going to university as a full-time student. It's about what is best and right for your child. Everyone has different learning styles, and both routes offer a different way to learn and to start a career. So what we're going to cover quickly is what is involved in that. So with higher and degree apprenticeships, they work in the same way as the other level apprenticeships. And not only will you be learning, but you're earning a salary from day one. So with a degree apprenticeship, your tuition fees are paid for by the employer and by the government. So your child would not be expected to pay the £9,000 a year tuition fees. So they're much less likely to build up any student debt. They study the same course content as somebody who would be at university full time, but they're able to put into practice right away in the workplace what they're learning, and also that they can learn from their colleagues. It helps for your child to stay up to date with the latest trends and technology in that sector as well through the degree apprenticeship route. And with an apprenticeship, it may be a benefit that they've gained at least 3 years work experience while completing the degree, and this could give them a competitive advantage when applying for jobs in the future. But it is hard work as a degree apprentice because you'd be fitting in the full-time work and the equivalent of a full-time degree alongside. It might take a little longer to do, so it might take 4 years of studying instead of for 3, but it's the same degree at the end. For some of these roles, for example, a solicitor apprenticeship, that can take up to 6 years at university to complete. And there are more than 100 different universities in England that now offer degree apprenticeships, and there are other colleges and training providers as well. The students on degree apprenticeships are entitled to exactly the same benefits as other students. So you can still have access to things like sports clubs, student union, any societies and student discounts. Your child would still be able to access all of those things. Lots of benefits that come with higher and degree apprenticeships. But as we said, it's about finding out what works best for your child in the career that they would like to go into, the role that they'd like to have, and how they learn. Um, it might not be the right choice for everyone, but no matter what kind of career they'd like to go into, they need to do their research and see if there's a way to do it through an apprenticeship route if that's what they'd like. It is important to note that these can be really competitive because higher and degree apprenticeships are becoming more and more popular. Um, so lots to kind of get on there quickly with being able to find some of those opportunities. And we would encourage students to keep their options open. If they're not sure about what route to take, they can apply for university and a degree apprenticeship at the same time. And then when it comes to later on, they can then decide which of the ones they'd like to choose from. Better that they've got a couple of options than to just pursue one or two where they might not go as expected. And we're now going to have a look at some of the different job roles available through an apprenticeship. And when we talk about apprenticeships, people often start to think of plumbing, electrical, the construction trades. There are many brilliant roles that you can now get an apprenticeship in, and there are hundreds of new apprenticeships that are being added. The range out there is amazing. So this slide just gives a very small sample of some of those available. Because of those different standards and the different sectors, there's actually over 1,500 different job roles that you can do an apprenticeship in. Lots and lots of things. And just the way that the job roles really vary, so do the range of employers who are offering apprenticeships. So this slide shows some of the familiar logos of big companies in England who all recruit apprentices. This is just a snapshot. Lots and lots of excellent brands that give amazing apprenticeship opportunities. Some of these employers on the screen may not be currently recruiting, but you'll be able to track their recruitment updates on their social media pages. And about half of apprenticeships are started with the large, well-known companies and about half with smaller local businesses. Ooh. You'll also need to think about the different roles that a company might have. So it might be that your child wants to work in finance. Well, they don't just have to look at the big finance and accountancy companies because lots of businesses will have their own in-house finance departments where they would have access to a huge range of experiences and opportunities. On the previous slide, we had Starbucks, and it may be that your child doesn't want to make or serve coffee, but actually they could be working in Starbucks as part of their sales team or their marketing team. They could be part of the legal team for Starbucks. They could be working in customer service and training and development. They might not ever actually make and serve a cup of coffee in that role. Same for Specsavers. You might think, oh, I know what that business does, I know what they make, and my child doesn't want to be an optician, doesn't want to be involved with helping people choose glasses, and actually they could do any of these things that are shown on the screen within that business because there's lots of elements that make a business run. A good idea to take time to look at the different departments that a company has. It could be that your child works as a solicitor for Coca-Cola, a web designer for Vauxhall, they could be working as cybersecurity for the government, lots and lots of different roles that they can have that in. So if you are seeing a job opportunity or if your child finds an apprenticeship advertisement and you think you know what that business makes, please still take the time to look at that job description thoroughly because it could be in a part of that business that is totally different to what you expect it to be. So I've had a look on the Find an Apprenticeship website in part of preparation for this. And what I did was I took the school's postcode and I've put that into the Find an Apprenticeship search. And what you may notice here is that um, at the point of recording this, within a 5 mile radius of the school, there were 21 vacancy opportunities. And as we widen that search, those number of opportunities really increases there. Um, what's important is for you to encourage your child to think about how far they may be able to go to work depending on their travel options. Or might it be that your child would like to relocate? We know lots of young people often move away for things like university, and it might be that your child decides that they would like to move away from home to pursue their career options. And this slide shows a few of those vacancies from the 5 mile radius of the school's postcode. So I've pulled out just a sample here to show you. And what you may notice is that they all have different closing dates. And this is a big difference to applying for somewhere like college or university. So with college and university placements, those vacancies tend to open and close at similar times, but because apprenticeships are live job searches, an employer can put them up when they see fit. If your child sees an opportunity that they would really like and they see that closing date, encourage them not to wait until the very end to submit the application, because we're finding, talking to employers, that if they receive a huge number of applications, they may decide to close their application window early. Um, and another thing you may notice here is the range in the different salaries. So this is because employers can decide what they pay as long as it meets the national minimum wage for apprentices of £6.40 an hour. This is reviewed each year in April time. So for April 2025, we would expect to see that amount increase if you are viewing this recording after April 2025. So just a couple of examples here. If you do go and have a look on this website or explore it with your child, there are usually job titles in there that you may not have heard of before. For example, here we have road logistics sales team. It might not be that that's something that your child is aspiring to do as a career, but if you go on and look at the job description, that might be something that sounds like a good opportunity for them. Um, those varieties in the salaries may also be because of the length of time, the working hours, the levels, the previous experience. So although it's exciting to look at the salary options, please encourage your child to be looking at the actual job and what it entails. And as I said earlier, there is room for progression with apprenticeships and other things that an employer might offer. So try not to be too bogged down in if you consider that to be initially quite low. So I saw those opportunities on the Find an Apprenticeship website. If you search for Find an Apprenticeship on an internet search, it will be coming up as the first link. It is a gov.uk official government site, and on that platform, your child, if they would like to, can register and they can apply for apprenticeship vacancies through that website. They can have a look at the different jobs that are being advertised. Because it is a live job site, they may need to do a few different searches. They may need to broaden how far they're looking. And because an employer will put up those vacancies when they are sort of required for that business, it may be that if your child were to search and nothing came up, that's not to say that you can't get an apprenticeship in that role. It just means there are no current live vacancies there. It is important to keep coming back to the site, and also you can set up alerts through this system too, so that it reduces the risk that your child might miss an opportunity, because the alerts can flag if an employer has posted something in the interests for your child. Um, you can start applying for the roles that are of interest, or your child can be applying for the roles that are of interest. Um, some of the bigger companies will advertise quite early in the year, so they will, for example, start advertising in autumn for the apprentices to start the following September. So try not to leave it too last minute, or there might be some really good opportunities that are missed. But equally, there are also some employers who will put up those opportunities closer to when they're looking for somebody to start. So well worth having a look at that at frequent times and setting up that alert system. And employers are telling us that the applicants that stand out to them are those who've made a bit of an extra effort. So your child could consider contacting the company and asking if they have any virtual open days coming up or opportunities to engage with them. This would look really impressive on their application and it may give them an advantage over other applicants. And whilst finding an apprenticeship is a great place to start, it's not the only place that you can explore opportunities. So if your child has got a particular employer in mind, they can visit their website, see if they can sign up for recruitment alerts or see if they send out a newsletter. Also, make sure that if your child is using social media, that they may be able to follow businesses or those training providers on their profiles. If they have a LinkedIn profile, it's worth following organisations on there, as we have heard from apprentices who found vacancies from employers or training providers on there. If you're not sort of familiar with LinkedIn or your child needs some support in setting up an account, they can speak to the school's careers advisor for support on that as well. We've also spoken to a lot of apprentices who say that they heard about their job through a family member or a friend. So encourage them to speak to people within their network to say that they're looking for apprenticeship opportunities and also speak to people within your own network and see you might be able to hear of opportunities in the local area. And there are lots of other job searches out there as well that you can have a look through. And it's worth spending some time looking into those different employers because it is so varied. The higher in degree vacancy listing is a useful document that's shared in October and then is updated again in January. And this contains a list of all the hundreds of higher and degree apprenticeships that are open for application. It gives key information about the employer, the apprenticeship, the salary, the location, how to apply, and they're shared on the Amazing Apprenticeships website. And there is an array of resources to support you and your child in researching apprenticeships and how to search and apply for opportunities. There is a monthly Choices magazine produced by Amazing Apprenticeships, which is available on their website and on the CEC website. These are really useful and contain lots of different articles and guidance for you, including apprenticeships as well as other technical pathways like T-levels. And your school may circulate this to you, but you can also receive this by visiting amazingapprenticeships.com/vacancies. For the useful information and more resources, there is amazingapprenticeships.com. They deliver a series of online workshops on behalf of the Department for Education that are available to parents and carers. They run on a monthly basis and look at apprenticeships and career options for your child. And there are other brilliant resources as well, which include things like guides and podcasts and films and videos about apprentices and what they're doing in their roles. So please do make the most of these resources that are available to you. We know it can feel incredibly overwhelming with helping your child with so many different options out there, and being informed on what is available will really help you to feel confident that you're supporting your child in the best way that you can. You can also visit the Careers and Enterprise Company website for more information, and there is support available through the National Careers Service, and they provide lots of information and guidance as well. I know that has been a lot of information. I hope you have found it helpful, and very best of luck in supporting your child on their next steps. Thank you for listening.